A whisper on an ancient stage could reach thousands without a single microphone. Ancient architects mastered the science of sound, designing 26 remarkable structures that used echoes not just to amplify voices, but to control crowds and shape entire societies. You will discover how these spaces manipulated human behavior through acoustic engineering, and by the end, you will never look at ancient ruins the same way again. How did a simple echo become a tool of governance? Why did cultures across the world develop similar sonic strategies? What secrets are still hidden in the stones of these places? What does it truly mean to hear the past speaking to us? This mastery of sound was not born from artistic whimsy, but from a profound and universal human need. Across the globe, from the amphitheaters of Greece to the plazas of the Maya, ancient societies faced the same logistical nightmare. How do you speak to a crowd of thousands without your words dissolving into meaningless noise? Their solution was to turn the very ground beneath their feet into a microphone. They engineered their world to carry a whisper, a chant, or a decree with crystal clarity, ensuring that every word from a person in authority landed with its full intended impact. This was the birth of acoustic engineering, a discipline we often think of as modern, but one that was being perfected millennia ago. Acoustics experts like David Lubman have dedicated their careers to mapping the sonic fingerprints of these ancient places. Their work reveals a sophisticated understanding of how sound waves behave, how they reflect off stone, and how they can be channeled and focused. But the true genius lies in how this physics was married with human psychology. The architects were not just building for sound, they were building for influence. A voice that arrives from everywhere at once feels less like a man speaking and more like the earth itself delivering a message. This phenomenon created an aura of divine authority or unquestionable power, a tool perfectly designed to maintain social order, command attention during vital rituals, and ensure that the most important announcements were not just heard, but felt by every single person present. The secret to their power lies in the physics of sound itself. To truly appreciate these ancient designs, we need a basic understanding of how a simple whisper becomes a commanding echo. Sound travels in waves, much like ripples spreading across a still pond after a stone is dropped. When these waves hit a hard, flat surface, they bounce back toward us, and we hear that reflection as an echo. The key for ancient builders was controlling these reflections, using geometry and material to turn chaotic noise into a directed message. They did not have modern technology, but they possessed a deep, intuitive mastery of their environment. They selected materials like polished limestone, marble, and stucco, not just for their beauty or durability, but for their incredible acoustic properties. These hard, smooth surfaces are superb reflectors of sound, acting like sonic mirrors that preserve the energy of a voice instead of absorbing it. Then came the genius of their shapes. A curved, concave wall, like the back of a stone theater, acts as a giant parabolic dish, catching sound waves and focusing them into a tight beam that can be projected over incredible distances. Conversely, an architect could angle a wall to create a specific delay, a reverberation that would make a leader's final word hang in the air, emphasizing a command or a prayer. This precise control meant a single voice could travel, undistorted and with full force, to every individual in a vast crowd. It was not merely about being heard, it was about being felt. A voice that arrives with such clarity and power bypasses simple listening. It resonates deep within, stirring emotions and compelling reactions. This was the ultimate medium for influence. This sonic control is perfectly embodied by one of the most famous structures from the ancient world, the Greek amphitheatre of Epidorus. Constructed in the 4th century BCE, this masterpiece of design remains an acoustic marvel even today. Its grand semicircular shape and 55 rows of steep, stepped seating are not just for a good view. They function as a massive acoustic filter. Each tier of limestone benches acts like a diffuser, breaking up sound waves and scattering them evenly across the entire audience. The result is so precise that a single piece of paper can be torn on the central stage, and the sound will carry with perfect clarity to a person sitting in the very last row, over 150 feet away. Imagine the power this gave a single actor or statesman. They did not need to shout or strain their voice. They could speak in a natural, conversational tone and be certain that every subtle inflection, every emotional whisper, would be heard by an audience of thousands. This was not merely a convenience for enjoying a play, it was a critical tool for civic engagement. In these spaces, the great dramas that explored morality, fate, and the gods were performed, subtly teaching societal values. More directly, leaders could address the entire citizenry, their arguments landing with undeniable force and clarity, perfectly designed to unite, to persuade, and to govern. The stone itself became a partner in oration, ensuring that the most important messages would never be lost to the wind. But this mastery was not confined to the dramatic arts of Greece. Across the Mediterranean, the practical Romans engineered their own spaces for power, most notably in the heart of their empire. The Roman Forum was a chaotic symphony of commerce, law, and politics, and at its center stood the Rostra. This was not merely a stage, it was a command post. Its strategic placement was an acoustic calculation, a deliberate choice to harness the physics of sound for political gain. The platform itself often featured a curved backdrop, a design that acted as a sonic shell, capturing the speaker's voice and projecting it forward into the open space of the forum. This open plaza, surrounded by towering basilicas and temples, created a natural amphitheater where sound waves could travel and reflect with minimal obstruction. A leader standing upon the rostra did not need to shout to be heard over the din of the crowd. The architecture did the work for him, carrying his words with authority and clarity to the masses gathered below. This was the stage for some of history's most pivotal moments. Orators like Cicero understood this power intimately. They used the rostra's acoustic advantage to deliver carefully crafted speeches that could sway public opinion, ignite political movements, or condemn rivals. Every pause for effect, every rise in dramatic tone was amplified by the stones themselves, giving their words an undeniable weight and gravity. The message was clear. The voice echoing across the forum was not just that of a man, but the voice of Rome itself. This sonic reinforcement turned persuasive oration into an instrument of unwavering social control, ensuring that the most important decrees and ideas were disseminated not just widely, but with an imposing, almost divine resonance. Far from the ordered plazas of Rome, another civilization was engineering sound for an entirely different kind of spectacle. In the dense jungles of Mesoamerica, the Maya constructed vast ball courts that were far more than simple sporting arenas. These long, narrow playing fields, flanked by towering, parallel walls of solid limestone, were meticulously designed to become instruments of sound. The hard, smooth surfaces of these walls were perfect for reflecting audio waves, and their precise parallel alignment created a powerful acoustic phenomenon known as a whispering gallery. A person standing at one end of the court could speak in a hushed, almost secretive tone, and their voice would travel with eerie clarity directly to someone standing at the opposite end, hundreds of feet away. The sound seemed to glide along the face of the walls, losing none of its integrity or quiet force, for the spectators gathered to watch the sacred ball game, this would have seemed like pure magic. Imagine the high priest or a game official positioned at one end, able to issue a quiet instruction or deliver a spiritual pronouncement that would be heard only by their counterpart across the court. To the thousands watching, this silent communication would have appeared telepathic, a clear sign that the event was guided by divine forces or those with supernatural authority. This acoustic trick was a masterstroke of crowd management. It heightened the ritual's mystique, ensuring that every participant and observer was gripped by a sense of awe and reverence. The game itself was often a matter of life and death, a ritual reenactment of cosmic myths, and the Whispering Walls ensured its proceedings were conducted with an otherworldly solemnity. The architecture did not just host the event, it actively participated in it, using the silent, clear carriage of a whisper to command attention and maintain perfect order. This same principle of sonic immersion echoes through the pillared halls of ancient India, within the magnificent stone courtyards of temples like the Vitala temple in Hampi. Architects crafted a different kind of acoustic instrument. They built vast, open pavilions known as mandapas, supported by rows of ornately carved pillars. But these pillars are far more than decorative. They are meticulously tuned musical instruments made of solid stone. When struck gently with a finger or a small mallet, each column resonates, producing a distinct, clear musical note. Some emit deep, bell-like tones, while others ring out with a higher pitch. An entire hall filled with these pillars becomes a giant lithophone, a stone xylophone waiting for a performer. The design genius extends beyond the individual notes. The entire layout of the mandapa, its ceiling height, the spacing between pillars, and the hard, polished granite surfaces were all calculated to manipulate sound waves. Chants and prayers sung within this space did not simply fade away. They were caught by the architecture, amplified, and swirled around the hall in a rich, reverberating cloud of sound. This enveloping sonic atmosphere was a deliberate tool for shaping human experience. For devotees gathered inside, the effect was overwhelming. The constant, lingering echo of their collective chanting created a powerful sense of unity, a feeling that hundreds of individual voices were merging into one powerful, divine resonance. This sonic immersion made abstract spiritual concepts feel tangible and immediate. The architects possessed a deep understanding of how sustained, reverberant sound could alter consciousness. The constant auditory stimulation could help quiet the internal chatter of the mind, guiding participants into deep, trance-like states of meditation and devotion. In this heightened state of awareness, the rituals became profoundly more impactful. The temple's design ensured that a large crowd remained focused, emotionally synchronized, and completely compliant with the sacred proceedings. The stones did not just host the ceremony, they actively participated in it, using sound to bind the community together in shared reverence. Deep within the sun-baked temples of ancient Egypt, another form of sonic control was taking shape, one designed not to project a voice but to shroud it in mystery. The immense Hypostyle hall of the Karnak temple complex is a forest of stone, a labyrinth of 134 massive columns packed tightly together, their carved capitals blooming into giant stone papyrus flowers high overhead. This dense arrangement was no architectural accident. It was a sophisticated acoustic filter. Unlike the open spaces of a Roman forum designed to carry sound, this hall was engineered to break it apart. When a high priest chanted an invocation to the gods, his voice did not travel in a clear, direct line. Instead, the sound waves struck the countless hard stone surfaces of the columns, fracturing into a complex web of reflections and micro-echoes. The result was not an intelligible sentence traveling across a room, but a lingering, omnipresent cloud of resonant sound. a single chant would fill the entire cavernous space, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at all. For the worshippers gathered in the dim, crowded hall, the effect was profound and deeply disorienting. The human voice was transformed into something entirely otherworldly. It no longer sounded like a man speaking. It felt like the very air itself was humming with divine presence, as if the gods were whispering directly from the stones. This sonic manipulation was a masterclass in psychological influence. The priests, who understood the acoustic properties of their temple, held the key to this auditory illusion. By controlling the sound at its source, they could govern the emotional experience of the crowd. A low, rhythmic chant would build a sense of tense anticipation. A sudden, sharp invocation would create a jarring moment of awe. The fragmented echoes made their words difficult to decipher, which only heightened the sense of mystery and reinforced the priest's exclusive role as interpreters of the divine will. In this controlled sonic environment, dissent was acoustically impossible. Questioning or even speaking out would be swallowed by the overwhelming, disorienting reverberations. The architecture itself ensured perfect compliance, using sound to instill a powerful mixture of reverence, fear, and wonder that kept thousands of devotees in a state of rapt, obedient silence. The whispering stones of Karnak show how sound could be broken apart to create mystery, but other architects sought the opposite effect, perfecting clarity to forge a direct and powerful connection. This pursuit of pure, undistorted sound finds one of its most elegant expressions in the sacred architecture of the Islamic world. Within the vast prayer halls of historic mosques stands the Mihrab, a beautifully ornate niche in the wall that marks the Qibla, the direction of Mecca. While its primary function is spiritual, its form is a masterpiece of acoustic engineering. The Mihrab is not a flat alcove, it is a deeply concave, shell-like structure. This curvature is precisely calculated to act as a sonic lens. When the imam, the prayer leader, stands directly in front of it to deliver the khutbah or sermon, his voice is captured by this curved stone surface. Instead of scattering in all directions, the sound waves are gathered and focused into a tight, coherent beam that is projected forward, directly into the heart of the congregation. This simple yet brilliant design meant the imam could speak in a calm, measured, and natural tone. There was no need to strain his voice or shout to be heard over the rustle of 1,000 people. His words would travel with remarkable clarity and warmth to every worshipper gathered in the hall, from the first row to the very back. This acoustic enhancement served a purpose far greater than simple audibility. It fostered a profound sense of intimacy and unity. Even in a cavernous space filled with people, each individual felt as though the message was being delivered directly to them, creating a powerful personal connection to the spiritual lesson. This clarity also reinforced the imam's authority, as his directives and teachings landed with unambiguous force and resonance. The great Mosque of Cordoba in Spain stands as a stunning example of this principle in action. Its forest of arches and columns could easily swallow sound, yet the focused projection from the Mihrab niche ensured the leader's voice remained the central, guiding force for the entire community. In this way, the architecture itself became a silent partner in governance, using the gentle amplification of a human voice to unify the crowd, direct their worship, and maintain perfect order through the sheer power of clear, compelling sound. This fusion of acoustics and cosmology reached its zenith within the walls of China's imperial capital. The Temple of Heaven complex in Beijing stands as a monument to this philosophy, where every stone and wall was engineered to harmonize heaven and earth through sound. At its heart lies the Echo Wall, a perfectly smooth, circular enclosure surrounding the imperial vault of heaven. Its brilliant design transforms a simple whisper into a private channel. Two people standing on opposite sides of this vast circle can speak to each other in the quietest of tones, their voices traveling effortlessly along the curved parapet with almost no loss of clarity. For an emperor performing the most sacred rites of the year, this was not a mere curiosity. It was a vital tool of statecraft. He could issue a discreet command to a minister across the courtyard, coordinate the timing of a complex ritual, or receive a whispered update, all without breaking the solemn silence of the ceremony. To the thousands of officials and participants witnessing this, it appeared as if the Son of Heaven was communicating through the air itself, his words carried on the wind, reinforcing his divine mandate. Nearby, the triple sound stones reveal another layer of acoustic mastery. Standing on the first of three large slabs and clapping once produces a single, clean echo. A step forward to the second stone yields a double echo, and a final step to the third stone returns the sound 3 distinct times. This was not random happenstance, but a meticulously calibrated effect. The number 3 held profound cosmic significance, representing heaven, earth, and mankind. The predictable, escalating echoes served as an auditory confirmation that the emperor was in perfect alignment with the universal order during his prayers for a good harvest. These sonic features were masterfully employed for crowd management. In the midst of a massive, intricate procession involving hundreds of priests and officials, a whispered command could instantly adjust the pace or direction of the movement, ensuring flawless ceremonial order. The architecture guaranteed that the emperor's will was executed with silent, invisible precision, making his authority feel less like a human command and more like a natural law. The stones did not just amplify his voice, they transformed it into the very voice of heaven, using the silent, clear carriage of sound to command absolute obedience. These principles of sonic architecture were not bound by a single continent or culture. Far across the Pacific, on the arid coast of Peru, another civilization was building its own version of an acoustic amplifier from the very earth beneath its feet. The great Adobe pyramid of Huaca Pucllana, constructed by the Lim, a culture over 1,500 years ago, rises from the desert as a massive terraced complex of sun-dried mud bricks. While it may seem like a softer, less permanent material than stone, its design reveals a profound understanding of sound projection. The pyramid's central plaza and its series of ascending platforms form a giant, natural amphitheater. When a leader or priest stood atop the highest terrace to address a crowd gathered in the open space below, their voice was met with a series of hard, flat surfaces. Each stepped level of the pyramid acted like a reflective shelf, catching the sound waves and bouncing them forward and downward, layering the speech with reinforcing echoes. The adobe bricks themselves, sealed with smooth clay plaster, provided an excellent hard surface for sound to reflect rather than absorb, ensuring the leader's words carried with force and clarity across the entire ceremonial center. This was not an arena for subtle plays or philosophical debate, but a command center for a society where oral tradition was everything. A single, clear voice from the summit could coordinate complex rituals, issue vital announcements to the entire community, or deliver strategic commands to assembled warriors. The acoustic design ensured that every word landed with authority, leaving no room for misunderstanding or dissent. In a culture without a written language, the clarity of the spoken word was paramount, and the architecture of Huaca Pucllana guaranteed that the voices of those in power would be the ones that echoed farthest and rang the clearest, physically cementing the social hierarchy into the very landscape. This architectural mastery of the spiritual soundscape reached its grandest expression under the vast dome of Constantinople. The great church of Hagia Sophia, commissioned by Emperor Justinian in the 6th century, was not merely a building but a carefully tuned instrument for the soul. Its architects achieved a staggering feat of engineering, raising a dome that seemed to float 180 feet above the marble floor, a representation of the heavenly firmament brought to earth. But this dome was also a profound acoustic device. Its immense curved interior surface acts as a giant resonator, capturing every note of a chant, every whispered prayer, and holding it in the air for an astonishingly long time. A single spoken word can reverberate for over 10 seconds, its echoes swirling and overlapping in a complex, lingering cloud of sound. For the thousands of worshippers gathered below, this created an overwhelming sensory experience. The chants of the clergy and the choir did not simply start and stop. They layered upon themselves, building into a continuous, enveloping tapestry of sacred noise that felt infinite and all-powerful. This sustained reverberation transformed the human voice into something transcendent. It no longer seemed to originate from a priest, but from the architecture itself, as if the very dome were singing. This sonic immersion was a deliberate tool of spiritual governance. The clergy understood that this lingering, disorienting echo had a direct effect on the human psyche. It made the intricate Greek of the liturgy difficult to follow word for word, shifting the focus from intellectual understanding to pure emotional and sensory absorption. In this state, the congregation became more susceptible to the ritual's emotional arc, more easily guided toward feelings of awe, penitence, or ecstatic joy. The prolonged sound created a collective trance, binding the diverse crowd into a single, compliant body of worshippers, all moving and feeling in unison under the guidance of the clergy. The architecture of Hagia Sophia did not just house a ceremony, it actively performed it, using the physics of reverberation to dissolve individual doubt and forge a powerful, governable unity of faith. Even the most seemingly humble structures held acoustic secrets. Across the rolling hills of Iron Age Europe, Celtic communities built their homes and fortresses with a deep, intuitive understanding of sound. The common roundhouse, with its circular wall and high conical thatched roof, was far more than just a shelter from the rain. Its shape created a natural sound chamber. A chieftain standing near the central hearth, the social and spiritual heart of the home, found his voice carried with surprising clarity to every person gathered along the walls. The curved interior prevented sound from being lost in corners, while the thatch above absorbed just enough of the higher frequencies to prevent harsh echoes, leaving the leader's words clear and resonant. This was where stories were told, disputes were settled, and plans were made, and the very architecture ensured that every word from the person in charge was heard and felt by all, reinforcing their authority in the most intimate of settings. This principle was scaled up dramatically for the entire community within the formidable earthworks of hill forts like Maiden Castle in England. These were not just defensive structures, they were centers of assembly and governance. The vast, open enclosures surrounded by deep ditches and towering banks of earth were strategically designed to manage the elements. When a leader addressed a large gathering from a specific mound or a raised wooden platform, the sloping earth banks acted as giant, sound-reflecting walls. They shielded the speaker from the relentless wind that whipped across the hilltops and simultaneously funneled their voice inward, projecting it across the crowded space. The wooden palisades that topped these ramparts further shaped and directed the sound waves, ensuring that a strategic announcement or a rousing speech before a battle could be delivered with force and clarity to hundreds, perhaps thousands of people. This was acoustic engineering born from pure necessity. In these tribal societies, where oral tradition was law and collective decision-making was vital, the ability to communicate clearly was a matter of survival. A leader whose words were lost to the wind could not maintain morale, coordinate a defense, or unite the tribe. The clever design of these spaces solved that problem. It allowed for effective governance through clear communication, facilitating debates that required everyone to hear the arguments and enabling speeches that could stir the spirit and forge a common purpose. The hill fort did not just protect the tribe from physical enemies, it protected the integrity of its most important tool, the human voice, using the very landscape to amplify authority and ensure the community moved as one. But this acoustic wisdom was not confined to grand monuments and towering temples. It thrived in the quiet, subterranean spaces of the American Southwest. Here, ancestral Puebloan peoples, often called the Anasazi, engineered their own remarkable sound chambers known as Kivas. These were not mere rooms, but sacred pits dug deep into the earth, circular chambers accessed by a single ladder through a hole in the roof. Their design was a masterpiece of acoustic intimacy. The circular shape and the soft, packed earthen walls created a very specific sonic environment. Unlike the hard, reverberant stone of a cathedral, these surfaces absorbed just enough sound to prevent chaotic echoes and distortion. The result was a space of incredible clarity and focus. A shaman or elder speaking from one side of the kiva in a calm, measured tone would be heard with perfect intelligibility by every person gathered around the central fire pit. Their voice was not amplified or echoed into a divine roar, but instead carried with a warm, present, and human clarity. This precise acoustic control was vital for the ceremonies that took place within. In the flickering firelight, enveloped by the earth, the community would gather to hear creation stories, learn the complex rules that governed their society, and participate in rituals that connected them to their ancestors. Every word from the spiritual leader landed with absolute precision, leaving no room for misinterpretation. The kiva's design ensured that these vital cultural transmissions were preserved with perfect fidelity, generation after generation. This fostered an unbreakable group cohesion, binding the community together through shared, clearly understood stories and laws. The architecture itself, using the quiet acoustics of the earth, became the guardian of social order and the amplifier of tradition, proving that the most powerful soundscapes are sometimes the ones that speak in a whisper, not a shout. This architectural manipulation of sound reached a new, breathtaking scale in the soaring naves of medieval Europe's great cathedrals. Gothic masterpieces like Notre Dame de Paris were not just built to inspire awe through sight, but through a profound auditory experience. Their immense length and staggering height, with vaulted stone ceilings that seemed to stretch toward heaven itself, were meticulously engineered to create a powerful and lasting reverberation. A single note from the choir or a word spoken from the pulpit could linger in the air for 10 seconds or more, its echo swirling and overlapping with the next sound in a continuous, enveloping cloud of sacred noise. For a peasant, a merchant, and a nobleman all standing together in the vast, dimly lit space, this sonic immersion was overwhelming. The distinct human sources of the music and the sermon were lost, replaced by a feeling that the sound was emanating from the building itself, as if the very stones were singing the glory of God. This was not an accidental byproduct of a grand design, it was the design. The clergy understood that this disorienting, all-encompassing echo had a direct effect on the human spirit. It made the Latin liturgy, a language many in the congregation did not understand, less about intellectual comprehension and more about pure emotional and sensory absorption. In this state of awe, the crowd became more susceptible to the ritual's emotional power, more easily guided toward feelings of penitence, wonder, or divine fear. The prolonged sound created a collective trance, binding a diverse and often fractious society into a single, compliant body of worshippers, all feeling the same overwhelming sensation at the same time. The architecture ensured that even those standing at the very back, far from the altar, were not mere observers but were fully immersed in this shared experience, feeling the vibrations in their chests as the organ played. This sonic unity was a masterful tool of ecclesiastical authority, using the physics of reverberation to dissolve individual doubt and forge a powerful, governable unity of faith that echoed through the entire Middle Ages. Even the most practical daily spaces were engineered for sound. In the bustling cities of the Ottoman Empire, the public bathhouse, or hammam, was a cornerstone of social and hygienic life, a place that could become incredibly crowded and noisy. To manage this, architects employed a surprisingly sophisticated acoustic solution. The central domed chambers of these bathhouses were clad from floor to ceiling in thousands of glazed ceramic tiles. While beautiful, these tiles were not merely decorative. Their hard, glossy surfaces are exceptional at reflecting sound, but the genius lies in their small, individual size and the gentle curvature of the domes above. Instead of creating one loud, sharp echo like a single large marble slab would, the countless tiny tile surfaces break up sound waves into a multitude of soft, diffuse reflections. This creates a gentle, lingering reverberation that blankets the entire space in a calming auditory haze. A whispered instruction from an attendant would carry with perfect clarity to a bather across the room, yet it would never feel loud or intrusive. This subtle acoustic control was vital for managing the complex flow of people through the various hot, warm, and cool rooms. Attendants could quietly direct traffic, maintain order, and ensure the ritual proceeded smoothly without ever needing to raise their voices above the relaxing sounds of trickling water and steam. The overall effect was profoundly psychological. This soft sonic environment, combined with the warmth and the scent of soap and incense, lulled visitors into a state of deep tranquility. It transformed a necessary public utility into a sanctuary of sensory peace, a place where the stresses of the outside world were acoustically washed away, proving that crowd control could be achieved not through commands but through calming, engineered serenity. This evolution from sacred resonance to public spectacle found a new stage during the Renaissance. In cities like Vicenza, Italy, a revolutionary design emerged to serve a growing, educated urban class hungry for art and ideas. The Teatro Olimpico, completed in 1585, was a marvel of this new thinking. Its architects abandoned the sprawling, open-air designs of antiquity for a more controlled, indoor environment. The most critical innovation was hidden beneath the audience's feet, a raked floor. This was not a gentle slope but a steep, angled incline that lifted each row of seats higher than the one in front of it. This simple geometric change was an acoustic masterstroke. A performer's voice projected from the stage would now travel on an unobstructed upward path. Instead of hitting the flat back of a person's head and being absorbed, the sound waves could glide over the audience, reaching every ear in the house with newfound clarity. The stage itself was a work of acoustic genius, designed with forced perspective. Deep, narrowing streets receded into the painted backdrop, their converging walls and angled surfaces acting like a series of nested sonic shells. These channels captured the actors' voices and funneled them forward, adding focus and projection to their delivery. The result was a space where the subtle poetry of a play or the nuanced argument of an oration could be appreciated in its entirety, from the cheapest seat to the most expensive box. This was about more than entertainment. It was about making complex ideas accessible. In an age before microphones, this architectural amplification ensured that the humanist dialogues and classical dramas that were shaping modern thought could be heard, understood, and debated by everyone present. The theater itself became an instrument of enlightenment, using its raked floor and sculpted stage to turn a crowded room into a single, engaged mind, perfectly tuned to receive every word. High above the manicured gardens of Hyamgi, the White Heron Castle stands as a silent sentinel, its wooden bones hiding a sophisticated auditory network. While its sweeping roofs and white-plastered walls are celebrated for their beauty, the castle's true genius lies in its hidden soundscape, a carefully engineered system of surveillance and communication. The long, narrow corridors and the multi-storied keeps were built with a specific acoustic signature in mind. The wooden plank floors, slightly suspended, were not just for walking. They acted as giant sounding boards, amplifying the lightest footstep into a clear, resonant report. A guard's routine patrol produced a distinct rhythmic creak, a familiar sound that signaled all was well. But the moment that rhythm broke, replaced by a frantic, running stampede, the message was instantly clear, an alarm ringing through the very structure of the castle without a single shout being uttered. This was the castle's first line of defense, an invisible web of sound that kept its inhabitants perpetually aware. Narrow stairwells and passageways, often built with slightly angled walls, functioned like whispering tubes, carrying a commander's hissed orders from one level to the next with startling clarity. During a tense siege or a sudden internal threat, this allowed for rapid, discreet coordination of samurai defenders. A lord could issue a command from a secure upper chamber and know it would be heard and executed on the ground floor within seconds. For the townspeople gathered in the castle's bailey during a crisis, this orchestrated sound was a tool of absolute control. The sudden, synchronized echo of armored feet moving as one, amplified by the wooden verandas, was a show of overwhelming force and readiness. It was a sound designed to assure allies and intimidate any potential dissenters within the walls, a powerful acoustic demonstration that the castle was awake, alert, and utterly in command. The echoing halls of Persepolis were designed to make a king's voice sound like the voice of an empire. At the heart of the Persian ceremonial capital stood the Epidorus, a grand audience hall supported by towering, slender columns, its roof open to the sky. This vast space was not built for quiet contemplation but for the precise projection of power. When the great king ascended his throne to receive delegations from across the known world, every spoken word was met by the architecture itself. The smooth, polished limestone of the floors and the numerous column bases acted as perfect reflective surfaces, catching each syllable and bouncing it back into the room in a series of reinforcing echoes. A single royal decree would not just be stated, it would be layered, its sound lingering in the air long after the king's lips had stopped moving. This created a palpable, lingering aura of authority that filled the entire hall. For a subject or a diplomat approaching the throne, the experience was overwhelming. The king's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, amplified and sustained by the very stones, making his pronouncements feel less like human speech and more like immutable divine law. This acoustic magnification was a critical tool of imperial administration. In a realm that stretched from the Nile to the Indus River, clear and forceful communication was the glue that held the empire together. The Epidorus design ensured that vital announcements, legal judgments, and diplomatic addresses were delivered with absolute clarity and unforgettable impact to hundreds of courtiers and ambassadors at once. It transformed a public audience into a powerful psychological exercise, using the physics of sound to reinforce the absolute and unchallengeable nature of Persian sovereignty, making the monarchy's authority felt in the very air that people breathed. This deep connection between sound and stone was not confined to grand architecture alone. Long before the first stone of a temple was laid, humanity was already listening to the landscape, learning its sonic secrets. Among the oldest continuous cultures on Earth, the Aboriginal peoples of Australia perfected this art, weaving acoustics directly into their understanding of the world itself. They navigated and governed through songlines, intricate oral maps that charted the continent through melody and story. These were not simple songs, but living databases of survival knowledge, lore, and history, each verse corresponding to a specific landmark on a journey. And along these routes, they discovered natural amphitheaters, places where the land itself was designed to carry a voice. A particular rock wall, curved by millennia of wind, could catch a storyteller's words and project them to a large group gathered below. A waterhole surrounded by smooth, hard banks would create a quiet, reflective bowl of sound, perfect for the clear and solemn delivery of sacred lore. The elders standing in these spots did not need to shout to be heard. The environment did the work, ensuring that every nuanced lesson, every vital rule for living, was transmitted with perfect clarity to every member of the community. This was governance through pure acoustics. The echo itself became a teacher, its repetition helping to memorize complex genealogies and territorial boundaries. The very act of hearing a story amplified by a specific cliff face tied that knowledge irrevocably to that place, creating a powerful mnemonic device that preserved culture for thousands of years without a single written word. The land was not just a resource to be used, but a partner in cultural survival. Its natural sonic properties harnessed to coordinate gatherings, settle disputes, and ensure that the most important messages would resonate, literally and figuratively, for generations to come. Within the smoky embrace of a Viking longhouse, the chieftain's voice was never lost to the din. These vast wooden halls, with their steeply pitched roofs rising to a central peak, were not just shelters from the Nordic cold but carefully tuned chambers for communication. The central, open hearth was the acoustic heart of the entire design. Its stone ring and the open space above the flames created a hard, reflective surface that acted like a sounding board. When a leader stood near this fire to address the assembly, his voice would strike this surface and project outward, cutting through the background clamor of a feast or a tense gathering. The high, arching roof, often lined with overlapping wooden planks or shields, further captured these sound waves, preventing them from simply escaping into the night. Instead of scattering and fading, the speech was gathered and channeled down the long, narrow hall. This design ensured that every declaration, every saga told to inspire, and every strategic plan for a raid landed with clarity on the ears of warriors and families gathered along the walls on benches. In a society governed by the things or public assemblies where laws were recited aloud and disputes were settled through oral debate, this acoustic clarity was not a luxury. It was the very foundation of social order. A leader whose words were muddled or unheard could not maintain unity or command respect. The longhouse itself, through the simple physics of its hearth and roof, guaranteed that the voice of authority would resonate, fostering the shared purpose and unwavering morale that defined the Viking Age. The same principles of acoustic governance echoed across the African continent, where the land itself provided the perfect stage. Many tribal societies did not need to build massive stone structures to achieve perfect sonic control. They simply found them. They identified natural amphitheaters, bowl-like depressions in the earth often surrounded by smooth, curved rock faces. These were not random gathering spots. They were carefully selected for their acoustic properties. A leader or elder standing at the lowest point of this natural bowl would find their voice effortlessly projected outward and upward. The encircling rock acted as a giant parabolic reflector, catching every word and reflecting it back toward the audience gathered on the sloping ground. This meant a speaker could address a council of hundreds using a completely normal conversational tone. There was no need to strain or shout. The landscape did all the work, ensuring their voice carried with clarity and authority to every single person present. These spaces became the vital hubs of community life. It was here, in these natural sound chambers, that tribal councils debated weighty matters of law and justice. Disputes between families were settled here, with the clear acoustics ensuring that every argument and every piece of testimony was heard without distortion or favor. Vital announcements concerning harvests, migrations, or looming threats were delivered from this spot. The architecture of the earth itself guaranteeing the message would be disseminated accurately and without panic. Rituals and storytelling sessions held here took on a profound power, as the voices of the elders seemed amplified by the very spirit of the land. This intelligent adaptation of the environment highlights a universal truth. Whether carving a temple from stone or finding a council circle in a hillside, ancient societies understood that clear communication was the bedrock of social order. They used sound not as a blunt instrument, but as a precise tool to unite, to guide, and to govern, ensuring that the voice of the community and its leaders would always resonate with perfect clarity. High in the thin air of the Andes, the Incas sculpted the mountains into a staircase for the gods. Their vast agricultural terraces, like the colossal concentric rings of Moray, are often seen as a marvel of farming engineering, but they hold a deeper sonic secret. Each level of these immense curved depressions acts like a giant acoustic shelf. A person standing at the center of the lowest terrace and speaking in a normal voice would find their words carried with startling clarity to every worker on the steps above. The hard, packed earth and stone retaining walls of each level provided perfect reflective surfaces, channeling sound upward in a clear, coherent wave. This was not an accident, it was infrastructure designed for the human voice. During the complex, synchronized labor of planting or harvest, a single overseer could issue precise commands about irrigation, seed selection, or timing without ever needing to move or shout. Their instructions would rise level by level, ensuring that hundreds of workers spread across the vast landscape moved in perfect, coordinated unison. This sonic control transformed back-breaking agricultural work into a precisely orchestrated ritual, maximizing efficiency and therefore survival in a harsh environment. But the purpose likely extended far beyond mere logistics. Researchers believe these terraces also served as vast, open-air ceremonial chambers. In a ritual context, a shaman chanting from the center would have their voice amplified and projected to every participant standing on the terraces above, creating an immersive, shared experience that bound the community together through a common auditory event. The very land they cultivated to feed their bodies was also engineered to nourish their social order, using the clear, carrying property of sound to organize labor, direct ceremony, and maintain the rhythm of an entire civilization. This architectural use of sound to command labor and worship finds a striking parallel in humanity's very first cities. The great ziggurats of Mesopotamia rose from the flat plains as stairways to the gods, their massive brick forms engineered for both spiritual ascent and sonic control. At the sacred complex of a priest ascending the towering central staircase was not just climbing toward the heavens, he was activating a powerful acoustic amplifier. Each step of the grand stairway and each level of the high platform acted as a reflective shelf for his voice. The sun-baked mud bricks, sealed with bitumen and plaster, provided a hard, smooth surface that bounced sound waves outward with remarkable efficiency instead of absorbing them. From his elevated position, the priest could chant an invocation or deliver a divine proclamation in a powerful, projected tone. His voice would cascade down the stepped facade, washing over the vast crowd gathered in the precinct below with clarity and imposing force. To the people looking up, the experience was overwhelming. The priest's figure was silhouetted against the sky, and his voice seemed to emanate from the heavens themselves, a direct line of communication from the divine. This was not an accidental benefit of the design, it was its very purpose. The acoustics reinforced a strict social and religious hierarchy, making the priest's authority feel absolute and unquestionable. During complex, multi-day rituals involving countless participants, a single clear command from above could coordinate the movements of the entire assembly, ensuring that every offering was made at the precise correct moment and every prayer was sung in unison. The ziggurat structure guaranteed that the most important ceremonial instructions were not just heard, but were felt as an undeniable directive, using the sheer physical power of an amplified human voice to maintain perfect order among thousands of devotees. Even the most serene monastic gardens held a hidden sonic architecture. Within the quiet walls of a medieval monastery, the cloister was the heart of daily life, a square garden surrounded by covered walkways with endless rows of stone arches. This seemingly simple design was a masterpiece of acoustic engineering, tailored for a very specific social function. The repeating arches and the long, parallel walls of the walkways created a perfect whispering gallery. A monk chanting a psalm in one corner would find his voice carried with perfect clarity along the stone vaulting, reaching a brother praying on the opposite side without ever needing to raise his voice above a meditative murmur. This allowed for the constant rhythm of divine office to continue, for prayers to be shared and chants to be practiced, all without the sound ever becoming a disruptive noise that broke the monastery's cherished silence. It was a system of sonic discretion that maintained both spiritual focus and communal harmony, but the echo corridors had a deeply practical purpose as well. In a crowded community where hundreds of men lived and worked together, coordination was everything. A discreet call from one end of the cloister could signal the time for a meal, summon a scribe to the scriptorium, or direct a group of laborers to a new task, all without the chaos of shouted commands. The architecture itself enforced discipline and order, ensuring the complex machinery of monastic life ran with quiet, seamless efficiency. The stones did not just amplify sound, they refined it, filtering out distraction and leaving only the essential message, proving that the most powerful acoustic control is often the one you never even notice. These principles of sonic vigilance found a truly systematic expression in the fortresses of Korea. The formidable walls of Hwasong were not just barriers of stone and earth, they were an integrated communication network. The architects of these citadels understood that a military's strength relied on the speed of its information, and they engineered the very defenses to carry it. Specific sections of the fortress wall were constructed with a subtle, calculated curvature and finished with exceptionally hard, smooth materials. These surfaces were not designed to absorb an assault, but to reflect a voice. A sentry spotting a threat could issue a low, urgent warning from his post, and his words would travel along the face of the wall with minimal distortion, reaching the next guard tower hundreds of feet away in a matter of seconds. The message could then be relayed onward, snaking its way across the entire perimeter faster than any runner could hope to move. This was not a simple echo, it was a directed transmission of vital intelligence. The strategic angles of the gates and the placement of watchtowers were all part of this acoustic calculus, creating clear channels for sound to flow. During a tense public gathering within the fortress walls, this same system allowed a commander's voice to project with authority across a crowded courtyard, ensuring orders were heard and panic was prevented. The fortress did not just defend with its height and thickness, it defended with its voice, using the silent, swift passage of sound to coordinate its protectors and govern those within its care. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, on remote islands surrounded by endless sea, another culture perfected the art of sonic architecture. The Polynesian Mari, an open-air temple defined by a central stone platform, was the heart of community life. These were not enclosed spaces, but carefully arranged courtyards where the ground itself and the surrounding landscape were the primary building materials. The architects of these sacred grounds understood that to unite a community, every voice of authority needed to be heard with absolute clarity. The central platform, or ahu, was more than an altar, it was a stage. Constructed from precisely fitted, smooth basalt stones, it provided a hard, reflective surface that would catch a speaker's voice and project it forward. But the true genius was in the placement. The Mari was always situated with intentionality, often backed by a grove of trees or a natural rock face that acted as a sounding board, preventing the sound from simply scattering into the wind. The open area in front of the ahu was kept clear and often sloped gently downward, allowing sound waves to travel unimpeded over the gathered crowd. When a chief or priest stood upon that platform to recite genealogies that stretched back to the gods themselves, or to announce new laws governing fishing rights and land distribution, his words did not fade. They were carried on the air, landing with force and clarity on the ears of every individual present. This acoustic guarantee was the bedrock of social order. In a culture where history, law, and identity were preserved and transmitted orally, the absolute fidelity of the spoken word was non-negotiable. A misheard decree could lead to conflict, a muffled genealogy to a crisis of identity. The Mari's design ensured that the most vital cultural knowledge was not just shared, but was received with its full weight and authority, uniting the community through the shared, clear experience of sound. Beneath the bustling streets of ancient Constantinople lay a hidden world of sound. The vast subterranean cisterns, like the magnificent Basilica cistern, were marvels of hydraulic engineering designed to hold millions of gallons of fresh water for the city above. But these cavernous spaces, with their forests of marble columns rising from dark, still water, were also accidental acoustic chambers of profound power. The architecture was perfectly configured to manipulate sound in startling ways. Every surface, from the smooth, wet columns to the vaulted brick ceilings, was hard and reflective. A single spoken word would not simply fade into the distance. It would strike these surfaces and bounce back, layered into a complex tapestry of overlapping echoes that seemed to come from every direction at once. The flat surface of the water itself acted as a perfect sonic mirror, doubling the reflections and adding to the disorienting, lingering reverberation that could make a brief whisper last for seconds. This created an environment where sound behaved in unpredictable and often eerie ways. For the workers who maintained these vital reservoirs, this acoustic property was likely a tool for both management and safety. An overseer conducting an inspection from a small boat could clap his hands once, and the resulting cascade of echoes would instantly reveal the vastness of the space and the structural integrity of the columns, much like tapping a glass to test for cracks. A low command spoken into the gloom would be amplified and carried, ensuring instructions about water levels or repairs were heard clearly by teams working far across the cavern, even if they were hidden from view behind countless pillars. But the potential for secrecy was perhaps its most intriguing function. The complex echo pattern made it nearly impossible to pinpoint the origin of a sound. Two people could hold a conversation from opposite ends of the cistern, their voices carried and scrambled by the reflections, creating a natural encryption that would baffle any unintended listener. This turned a purely utilitarian structure into a discreet meeting place, a hidden chamber where messages could be passed and plans could be whispered, all under the silent gaze of the ancient Medusa heads used as column bases. The cistern proves that acoustic intelligence was not reserved for temples and theaters alone. It was woven into the very infrastructure of a city, a hidden layer of functionality that used the physics of sound to manage, to communicate, and to conceal. These stepwells of ancient India plunged deep into the earth, their geometric staircases descending like inverted pyramids into the cool, dark water below. At a place like Chand Baori, you are faced with over 3,500 steps, a breathtaking maze of precise symmetry that seems to defy the very chaos of nature. But this was far more than a water source. It was a social engine and a carefully tuned acoustic instrument. The very design that provided access to water also created a remarkable vertical sound chamber. The hard stone steps, arranged in a repeating, cascading pattern, acted as a series of acoustic shelves. A person speaking on one level would find their voice reflected and channeled by the staircases both above and below them. The sound waves did not simply travel outward, they traveled vertically, carried by the architecture from the water's edge all the way up to the topmost landing. This allowed for clear communication across vast vertical distances that would normally scramble and distort the human voice. A woman drawing water at the very bottom could easily converse with someone at the top without ever raising her voice above a conversational tone. In the bustling social life of the stepwell, where hundreds of people gathered to collect water, escape the heat, and socialize, this acoustic clarity was vital for coordination. An elder could make an announcement from a central platform, and their words would rise through the entire structure, ensuring everyone heard the news or the instruction. During a ritual ceremony, a priest's chant would be amplified and focused by the converging walls, creating an immersive sonic experience that enveloped every participant, no matter which step they stood upon. This was crowd governance woven into the most essential of daily routines, using the physics of the structure itself to ensure that in a potentially chaotic, multi-level environment, the human voice remained the clear and guiding force. These universal design principles reveal a shared human genius, a collective discovery that emerged independently across continents and centuries. From the Maya ball courts to the Roman Forum, architects consistently selected the hardest, smoothest materials available: polished limestone, marble, stucco, and glazed tile, all chosen for their incredible ability to act as sonic mirrors. They then shaped these materials with geometric precision, employing concave curves to focus sound like a lens, parallel walls to create whispering galleries, and stepped tiers to diffuse audio evenly. But the true common thread is not just in the physics, it is in the profound psychological understanding behind it. Every culture discovered that a voice, amplified and clarified by its environment, ceased to be merely human. It became something greater, an instrument of awe that could command attention, stir deep emotion, and synchronize the behavior of a crowd. This ancient mastery of psychoacoustics, the science of how sound perception influences our mind and behavior, was their ultimate tool for building civilization. They learned that clear sound fosters unity, while disorienting reverberation can create mystery and fear. They used sustained echoes to induce trance-like states in worshippers and sharp, directed projections to ensure a king's decree was unmistakable. This was not magic, but a sophisticated science of social control, developed through observation and perfected over generations, all to achieve the same fundamental goal: to make the community listen, believe, and act as one. From the whispers of Greek theaters to the echoes of Mayan courts, these 26 sound structures form a global testament to human ingenuity. They reveal a profound and universal truth: that architecture is not just a shelter for bodies, but a vessel for the human spirit, designed to shape how we feel, how we think, and how we come together as a society. This ancient wisdom speaks to a deep understanding that sound is not merely heard, it is felt in the bones. A perfectly clear whisper can command more attention than a frantic shout, and a sustained, enveloping echo can quiet a restless mind far more effectively than any command for silence. These builders knew that the physics of sound was a direct pathway to human psychology, a tool to govern emotions and orchestrate actions on a grand scale. Their legacy is not just in the stones they left behind, but in the enduring power of their ideas. As we move through our own modern world of concrete and glass, of open-plan offices and reverberant public squares, we can still learn from their acoustic wisdom. What if our own spaces were designed not just for efficiency, but for emotional resonance? Could a hospital corridor use calming acoustics to ease anxiety? Might a classroom be shaped to ensure every student feels spoken to directly? The ancient world offers a powerful blueprint for creating environments that are not only functional, but truly harmonious, places that use the invisible art of sound to bring out the best in us. Thank you for joining this exploration into how echoes once governed crowds. If these historical mysteries resonated with you, share your own thoughts on which ancient sound structure fascinates you most in the comments below, and subscribe for more journeys into the forgotten corners of our past.